ask anyone in the industry what a hotel is. And they describe a building, maybe room upstairs, a lobby, a front desk, a restaurant nobody use. And so my guest today built a hotel with no lobby, no front desk, and no building. The neighborhood was the lobby, the bakery next door was a breakfast room, the bar on the corner was a hotel bar. And that was actually 15 years ago, just to put things in perspective. And today is on the development side, where the decision about 2035 are already being signed. And his argument is simple. The line between living, working, and traveling is gone. A building with one single use is a building with one single point of failure. So today we ask the uncomfortable question. If the hotel of 2035 is not a hotel, then what it is? And who ends up owning it? Tiago Venâncio, welcome to HXT 212.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So my name is Thibaut Catala. I'm the founder of Catala Consulting, and this is HXT 212.
HXT 212.
Okay, so can you walk me a bit through, because you took empty shops on a Vienna street and turned them into hotel rooms with no lobby and no reception a few years ago. What did you have to give up to make that work?
So I think the idea was a funny way to try to fix an issue that most of the big cities had, because we were coming out of the financial crisis. And basically, my partners at the time, architects and designers, they were looking at the retail areas and the high street areas of Vienna, which is very typical to have plenty of shops in most of the residential neighborhoods as well, and try to think what can we do as a creative way to revitalize it and to regenerate without transforming its essence. So they came up with the idea of creating this one studio, one bedroom hotel within each of these retail units. And usually you would basically take over an existing collapsed business like a chandelier shop, and we would convert that shop into a one-bedroom studio, self-service kind of hotel approach, where you would come in from the street into the studio and experience the decor and the theme around what the business used to be. Yeah. And then you could sleep it over. And your hotel becomes the neighborhood. So your lobby, it's the actual street. So you would come out to the street and you would be presented with options that we would create specifically for the location, where to go and have your coffee, where to go and have your meal. You can have groceries delivered. You could cook in, because it was a self-contained with kitchenette units. So you would basically experience the life of the neighborhood. And that's the concept of Kretzer Hotel. And that was born probably 15 years ago. And it's still under rent, but we call it a micro hospitality concept, because the idea was never to have plenty of units. So by location, we usually have between 2 and 5 units. So that's the kind of approach. So we would take 2 to 3 shops all together and try to convert that into business. And until today, it's still running in Vienna. That's the only location that we have under that concept. And you can still experience different neighborhoods. So here, we're not very far from where you are. We have 2 units, 2 shops. And then you have a few more in the 2nd district and the 4th district and 5th district and so on. And the idea is that Vienna, with these different locations, becomes our hotel. So we have less than 100 units. And basically they work separately physically, but they work integrated into one concept. And what we found that people loved it's first, obviously we're talking about 15 years ago, the idea of self-service. So you would come in, you would have your key, you would have a code, input the code, get the key, get inside the unit, everything was there ready for you. Then you have a list of recommendations. You have your app with our concierge, let's say, that would recommend further beyond the location where you're, but further in Vienna, where could you go? And people love the authenticity of it. Like, I'm living in the actual shop and I can see what it used to be, but I'm also living in this particular neighborhood, right? Instead of just staying, in a Marriott hotel. Nothing against Marriott, but, a very standardized hotel experience. And that was the trigger. But also, I think that's the creativity of the partners initially it's also an architectural play, right? So it's basically reusing a building that was beautiful and still is, and reusing a space that otherwise would remain empty into a different concept. And the hospitality brought life to to the building, live to the neighborhood, and actually it was a great idea to develop it.
It was with so the name of the brand is Urbanauts.
So the parent company is called Urbanauts. So Urbanauts has 3 different concepts. So Graz Hotel was the initial one, these shops. Then they evolve into Urbanauts stays, so a more traditional service apartment model. And then they have also a more countryside concept, which is called Hideouts, which is a little bit outside of the city center, but still with the same philosophy of Urbanauts stays. They have, I think, around 14 different locations at the moment, mostly in Vienna, but there is one in Linz as well, another city in Austria. And we had the plan at the time also to expand beyond Austria, which we tried. We learned from it, and we decided not to do that and focus back into Vienna. And our last opening was in the 19th district. October 25, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, not very far off. So in time for the Christmas markets last year. Yeah.
And so it is actually quite fascinating because today is actually a concept which is quite well accepted. But 15 years ago, did you have any complaint or like were people a bit scared about this concept?
It was disruptive for sure. Not complaints. I think we had more press than we anticipated. We did a few marketing plays, meaning we, not me, because I was not here, but the company did a few marketing plays that were quite clever. So we did a one-night stay at the Otterhinger brewery. So we had basically a bedroom put inside the brewery, and people would stay there for a night, and that got a lot of press. Then we had a few more reportings about the authenticity and the connection to the neighborhood, and we came out in quite a lot of press. But we are not a very large concept, so we had a lot of attention in that sense. We loved the attention. People loved the concept. We had plenty of American customers coming in and things like that. But we never wanted to escalate it into become a mass player everywhere. So we were very careful on to stepping stones, one step at a time, don't overstretch ourselves. And that's also one of the reasons why we are focused in Vienna now, mostly because we don't want to lose the core of its essence by overstretching ourselves.
And what was the...
But going back just for the complaints, actually it was the opposite, because the first time that we tried to partner up with, recommending other places people to explore, people didn't understood it initially. What do you mean become one of your friends? And basically they learn over time that it brings them a lot of exposure as well. And not only the certainty of having people coming there every morning for the breakfast or every night for the dinner, but it gives them exposure beyond that, because people would then share their experiences with their friends, and people that might not actually stay at one of Urbanauts concept, they will still go there to see that nice restaurant or that nice workshop and things like that. So in the way initially was not fully understood the full scope, but now I think everyone is fully happy, and we have the fellows for over 10 years straight in location. So
you think like you have some big brand today that took some inspiration from your concept?
Well,
I already am thinking about one or two already.
I would say that some companies took some lessons. I think we are not reinventing the wheel as well, right? So we didn't create something that was absolutely new. We also took inspiration from different concepts. I think now the service apartment model, it's much more mainstream than it was. So you could look back and think, well, maybe they have looked at some parts that we offered, but again, as Urbanauts was developing, others were also developing and doing similar. I think the idea of integrating where you are into the experience has become more common, and that is maybe a thread that we can go later, which is it's more than just the accommodation now. It's more about the experience. So a lot of the nowadays hospitality concepts are focusing on that experiential part or that lifestyle, whatever you want to define it. And I think a lot of those not copy but mimic a little bit that idea of providing a number of recommendations and a number of partners that you can go and use as part of your experience.
No, I think it makes sense. And what was attractive to this model? Was it the profitability, the numbers behind? Because you are running those hotels with very limited payroll and very limited cost, I understand. Do you have any kind of data around the cost per key versus a conventional hotel and so on? Like, did you make some comparison between?
Well, we do know how much. So
More or less,
more or
of
less,
course.
because
Yeah.
just to be fair, so basically we have one central office that is our physical reception. If you need help, we still have a place to go, which is not in any of the other locations, which is in the 4th district. And then what we do is we take a lease from a landlord, owner of the spaces, and we convert them according to our design with them. And we know the cost of furnishing it, so what we call in hospitality the FF&E, the furniture, fish, and equipment, which the last 2 that we did was around 26,000 euros to fit out. Once the fit out is done, the building, then to furnish it. Which is on par with some of the more traditional hotel, I would say. So we could reference that any upscale to upper upscale, which is the positioning where we are, hotel bedroom or hotel service apartment usually is between 20 and 35,000 euros in terms of furnishing. I think the construction then is irrelevant because the building is existent. So that's the interesting part on the investment profile for who is our landlord. Because basically otherwise you will have an empty retail space or an empty ground floor that you cannot convert to residential. So we basically offer them a solution over a little bit of cost of conversion. In terms of profitability for ourselves, for Urbanauts itself, yes, we do not have much staff, but we still have a spread out footprint, which also has some challenges. If you think about the normal housekeeping, the normal servicing of whatever supplies we need to put in there, we actually have to physically go to every single unit every single day. So it has other costs versus an hotel where you just go up and down the stairs, right? It's an interesting model that needs some scale to be highly profitable. And then every single location has a different rent level as well. So you need to make sure that the rent balances out and so on. So it's not as straightforward as a normal hotel would do, like we do in our company, which is much standardized, so you know what to expect. Here it is a little bit the physical grid that poses some challenges. And if you are talking from November onwards, for instance, with Christmas market in Vienna, it's a big one, season for us. The complexity of servicing those apartments during Christmas or New Year's Eve, it's tremendous. From different reasons, everyone is off. There is plenty of traffic everywhere to move around, so it's not as straightforward. But they seem to be making it work quite well. It's been in the business for almost 16 years now, so it's quite an interesting concept, but quite an operational challenge as well.
I'm sure, yeah. So that was the first part of your career and journey as well, and then you went from that to Casa Cook in Madonna di Campiglio, if I'm not mistaken.
So Urbanauts, it's, let's say, the how all of my partners get to know each other and work with each other. So the business started 16 years ago, but then around 3.5 years ago, Urbanauts was challenged by one of the landlords to try to take this more out of conventional approach to a more traditional hotel. And they challenged them to be the operator for a normal, let's say normal between commas, international branded hotel. And that's how my company now is called TREASURESTS. That's how we were set up. So 3.5 years ago, the idea born. And then we went after what would be the hotel ideally for us to operate. And that's when we found the concept of Casa Cook, which is a brand, quite a niche, Greek-based brand that is a resort-driven, beach resort-driven concept. And we thought, well, it works beautifully on the beaches, but this is more about the experience that concept delivers. Can we actually develop it outside of the beach? So we start having conversations about maybe, other leisure destinations as ski destinations and lake destinations. So the landlord, the investor behind the idea of trying to purchase an hotel and develop this Casa Cook, it was a synergy. So all the 3 pieces went together quite easily. So the operator was in place. They like Casa Cook brand, the different design minimalistic approach that they have, like almost a barefoot luxury as they call it. And then the landlord was someone that was already playing in the hotel business and the lifestyle, so as owner of hotels. They liked this approach as well. And then the brand also connected quite well with trying to make it work on the ski destination, like a fantastic challenge. So the first location that we looked was in Madonna di Campigo in Italy, which is quite famous ski destination in the 60s and 70s, still very traditional, but it was basically left behind in that sense compared to other markets. And when you got there, you have absolutely amazing luxury hotels, but very traditional ski hotels. And we thought, well, we can definitely shake it. And our hotel is located right in the city center. It's a small property, a very traditional 60s hotel. And basically, the team came together, so the project team came together between acquisition and conversion. It took us almost 2 years, but we completely flipped it upside down. So if you look at it today, you don't know you are in Madonna di Campigo, but you still know you are in Madonna di Campigo. So the design is quite different. And then the other take that we did, again, this is more the operational angle and design angle that we took, which is just make it a little bit more interesting. It's a small hotel. Basically, we don't have a huge spa or pool to offer. We are in the main piazza, so in the main square. So what we have to offer is footfall. So people walking past the hotel to go to the lifts, to go to the ski lifts. So we decided to create a nice little terrace and also to develop the F&B concept, the food and beverage concept, to be looking out and not looking in. So when you walk into the hotel, you are at the bar. There is no reception. So basically the main thing that you see is the reconfigured bar design that we did. And then you have a restaurant that we created a concept specifically for the location in partnership with a very famous chef from Netherlands. And the idea is we created its own identity, its own concept, so that we can capture the locals to come in. Yeah. It's all about what we were thinking at that time was do something different. That is our approach, from Urbanauts and TREASURESTS. We have to have fun, so do something very different.
Reverse, like you have the city center Urbanauts, and then you have the one a bit more traditional. Exactly. So it's kind of the two opposites of the scale.
Highly designed again, and talk through lens of people that know how to run operations and people how to design the concept. So it's both together. I think it's quite a unique approach. So it's the before and after that comes together quite well. So we took that urban experience from Urbanauts, but also challenging the brand from being a beach brand into becoming something else. Yep. So all came together to design, and basically our idea was to make the ground floor the hub of the hotel, which is not very big, but it's where you would mingle with everyone and you understand what we are trying to offer. So by having the bar as your main focal point when you come up, you are already seeing the experience is completely different. You are welcome with a drink, you are welcome to sit down and relax. And then the restaurant was also talked through to be a very different take on what is the normal Italian mountain approach. So that's where we kind of brought our learnings into an urban concept that we created our own brand, into using a concept that was already developed by another brand, but reinventing it in a way together into a mountain destination.
That's really cool. So you can learn something in one and then apply into different markets. And you mentioned as well at the beginning that, yes, you have built in Austria and Italy as well, and you try as well in different countries, but sometimes it didn't work. So where did the model refuse to travel? Like, do you see like any countries which will be a bit resistant to this kind of concept? Or what did you learn around this journey here?
Well, I think from my experience, so when I joined, so just to give a bit context maybe, so I joined the company 2.5 years ago. So when I came in, my background was development. So I worked throughout Europe. So when I saw and understood the concept, there was already an international expansion plan in place, but I was the one that saw huge potential in many cities, and I pushed for us to try to do a little bit more as we could. And what I saw at the time is that obviously when it was launched, it was quite innovative, but their pace of growth was steady, not crazy. So nowadays you have plenty of other similar concepts, and you also have the advent of Airbnb, which when it started, Airbnb was almost non-existent, right? So the idea that today if you are a user of Airbnb, or if you rent apartments to stay instead of staying on a normal hotel, you already have this kind of self-service approach, right? So you are greeted by apps, you have everything sent before as an instruction, and then you access the unit by yourself. So in that sense, that was no longer the disruptive factor from Urbanauts. What was it is always going to be picking the right location and develop a destination around it, like a neighborhood feel, and be a design that is quite unique to itself. So we look at other countries, and we actually started operations in other countries that didn't work, but we were in France, we were we are in Italy still, and we were looking into Lisbon in Portugal. And we did look at other markets. Basically, what we were thinking is coming down the Southern Mediterranean would make sense, because you have these old buildings that are no longer fit to purpose what they were, old palatial houses or small residential buildings. You cannot convert to a normal hotel because you need scale. So you are always looking at things. We were always looking at things between 5 and 25 units, so not very big for an hotel. But the idea was really to try, again, architecturally thinking, to revitalize and to be, not to be greenwashing, but basically to use existing carbon footprint and not build from scratch. And that potential is huge, right? So if you think of any of the Southern Mediterranean countries, if we're going from Portugal to Spain to Italy to even all the way to Cyprus, which we are also looking at, you have these solid construction network there, but it's no longer modern or used to purpose. So what can you do with it? The most common measure, unfortunately, and I'm Portuguese, so I can say that in my country it happens, is demolish and build from scratch. Okay. Which we were always saying with the beautiful buildings, why would you do that? Well, because we need bigger scale. Well, there are concepts that will still make it work. So we had these experiences in some of the countries. Why it didn't work, or why we didn't move forward is again, because we are a micro hospitality concept, so we cannot stretch ourselves. We opened something in France.
Let me guess, the French are tough.
It was a beautiful hotel, and it still is. It's still working, but we left the operation. It's no longer Urbanauts. But it was on one of the most peculiar cities in France, close to Bordeaux and Périgord, which is called Montpazier. And right in the main square, there were two buildings separated by a road. One of them on the main square, which would have a restaurant, and then we'll have rooms, and then the other, just aside the road, it will have the bar, the pool, and more rooms. And we opened the first part with the pool and the bar and the rooms, 14 bedrooms in the summer. Beautiful location, but it's a complex network in France to make operations work, and there is a heavy regulatory behind it, and everything related to staff, it's highly expensive. And we came into it under the IDOTS concept, so it's a more hotel-like concept. And we had staff, not a full staffed hotel, but we had some staff to serve the 14 bedrooms, to serve the pool and the breakfast on the bar and so on. So we started seeing the cost rise up quite quickly. So we needed the second piece, which was a 2 stages construction. When the second piece will open, it will add more rooms to the stock, and we would not increase the staff. So it would make operations a little bit more efficient. But again, because France is a little bit more complex than anyone anticipated, we got the huge delays on construction by permitting and licensing. And we actually never opened the second building. So the operation struggled quite heavily. So we decided to leave it, because the owner would had a further 1.5 year delay to get it open. So it would not make the operation profitable at all. So we left it. And what we learned from it is that concept IDOTS or Urbanauts ideas still works. We just need to make sure that everything is aligned and that we are not pushed by the investment or by the regulatory framework. So we need to make sure that we control the narrative. So nowadays we say that we are part of the project team. So from the very first time you start discussing how to do it until it opens, we have to be there. Otherwise we lose control of how it will end. And as operator on both of our companies, we are the last one. So we are there to pick up all the pieces. So we need to make sure that when we go to pick the pieces, we know what to pick. So be involved from the very beginning. I think the mistake that we did was to lose control of the investment part and how the development would go.
And making sure you have a strict due diligence on any kind of projects, more quality over quantity, I guess.
I think we jumped in. Everyone was super excited with. If you saw some pictures back in the day, you would understand it was a beautiful property. Everyone jumped very excitedly about it. And I think we were overly excited and not cautious enough to protect ourselves. And we decided to open in time for the summer half of the hotel, which normally is already a bad tail in operations. But we thought, well, summer would be good. And it was good. But then after summer, everything went down. And because we no longer had a restaurant, we never had a restaurant, we don't have a reason for people to come over on the weekend. So we needed to create that kind of demand generator. And the pool was beautiful, but it works for the summer, right? After that, you need something else. So the idea was also the food and beverage. And we missed that. So, of course, we then suffered a little
Bordeaux and region is quite seasonal. And,
it's quite seasonal.
Between April to maximum October, I think. That's kind of the good season. And after it.
And it's weekend business as well. And if you have to travel around to go to somewhere, you're basically driven by restaurants, or mostly by restaurant or by wine. Or food and it's the main driver. So if you don't have anything to offer, then you are basically losing business to your competitors. And we had a great hotel in Montpensier, beautiful property, which it was an old palace, but the main feature was a Michelin star restaurant. So people would travel miles to go there, and then they would stay over. So that was the idea, but we were much better located and a much iconic location, but we missed that second part.
Okay. And looking back at all those kind of different projects and now as well the new kind of concept with Urbanauts and the different project that you had, do you believe the traditional hotel is obsolete, or do you think it's just badly run?
Well, I tend to follow the trend, and I always say that it's true and false at the same time. So not everything is black and white. I like to say the world is colorful, right? Full of colors. So the hotel has a space for every single category to still exist. I think what we are used to is before we were basically mainstream into one type of hotel. That is the hotel. That was the American typical Hilton, Marriott's. This is the hotel. And then if you don't have enough money, you can have within the same company similar concept, smaller, more limited services, but still the same typical American corporate hotel or American leisure hotel. And what we have seen for the past 15 to 20 years, but mostly quickly growing now after pandemic, is that people understand that there is time and space for every single different type of journey. So you can capture the same guest throughout the different journeys they do in 1 year. If it's the summer break with the kids, if it's the weekend getaway with the wife, if it's an explorer running up to the lake and hiking, you can capture all of that in different segments and in different type of products. I am a guest of a very specific hotel when I want to go, for a break for 2 weeks and disconnect. But I am also a very traditional hotel when I have to go to a corporate event or a meeting. I use the same kind of hotel. So I think the hotel is blending in more what you do as a person. I think it's, and I do that I do say that a lot in branded residences, which is I think hotel is becoming more a house or home more than anything else. So it really depends on who you are, what you're doing. And the idea of one fits all, it's gone. So you have hundreds of different concepts today, and all of them are still viable businesses. You don't need to have only 5 or whatever it used to be back in the day. I still remember when Marriott had 2 or 3 brands, right? And then how many they have now? 50?
1,000.
And that is not wrong. What they are doing as a business is they understand that the guests have different profiles and different intentions throughout the year, or even every 2 years they change. And what we saw from pandemic, mostly, it was already being seen, but I think pandemic just accelerated greatly, was that people no longer pick the hotel only for the location. They want the experience around it. And I think it's a lot more about the experimental concept. So if you come to a place, whatever that's an hotel, a service apartment, or an Airbnb, what you are booking in more and more is what am I going to get out of it? What's my experience? What am I going to Budapest? Am I going to Budapest to see food? Then where I want to stay? I want to stay close to where the main markets are. It's all about experimental. So I think the traditional hotel is evolving to try to capture a little bit that, but at the same time there is a proliferation of different concepts that capture most of it.
That's interesting. That's something which the very first step I do with every single hotel we work with, even in revenue management and those kind of commercial activities, is to make sure the hotel defines very clearly their ICP, their personas. And that's something which I hear quite often when a lot of owners or operators say but we are trying to capture anyone because we want to capture all opportunities. And I strongly believe that if you do a bit of everything, you do a bit of nothing.
Yeah.
So it goes in the same line what you just mentioned. In a way, hotels will clearly define who they're after, they niche and go full blast on this. So let's say like if you want to go after the experiences for a couple, then your campaign, your marketing, your capex, your design, everything will be done for couples. But then if you spread too thin, then the hotel become a bit less relevant, and then that's very similar to what you're saying.
It is like that. So our company, Treasurers Hospitality, we are what we say white label operator, meaning we are an operator of an hotel that is owned by a third party, and we do it under somebody else's concept.
Yeah.
So very much the opposite of Urbanauts, which has its own concept. What Treasurers does is to try to fit the purpose of the travel with the right concept. So we work with all different international brands, and that's the first exercise. So when you imagine that you are a wealthy investor and I want to buy an hotel, well, I have this hotel, what would you do with it? That is the first challenge, right? So what is the essence of the travel? It's not a straightforward answer. That's my first thing. I always say it's not clear to anyone immediately, but then you start digging it up. So you have two options. Either there is a demand already there, or you're going to create demand. That is the dream that everyone has. Well, I'm going to develop a new market that doesn't exist. Very nice to say, very difficult to achieve.
Correct, yeah.
It's possible, but very difficult. But you still have concepts that work. You know, Aman, when it started, Soho House, when it started, there was very little like that.
Yeah.
So they created a story and a demand around the concept, and then wherever they would go, people would follow.
Yeah.
That still exists, but it's very difficult to achieve. What is more common is you have a demand there, but it's highly fragmented. You need to identify who is your target, again, as you were saying. Sometimes can be only one, sometimes can be one and the fringes of it, but you need to understand what are you offering. You know, different international brands today have a little bit of a wider scope, and they work in a way, but they do not become relevant over time. And I'm going to give an example, and I apologize because we work with that company. But for instance, Mercure, it's a very well-known French brand from Aqua. That's a brand that I would never work with, nothing against it, but just because they try to capture such a wide mid-market that they are fit for purpose once you open for probably 5 years, and then they become irrelevant. They become dated. So you need to be constantly investing into the hotel to become exciting and to have a reason for people to stay there, because it's such a wide net, let's say. And if you think about it, it was hugely successful 80s to 2000s, where every hotel was pretty much the same. And they were targeting that money, price sensitivity clientele. Nowadays, with that same price sensitivity, you have a lot more concepts, a lot more either exciting or a lot more niche concepts that people would say, well, it's not only about, being a French brand or being that location, or it really depends on what else you are looking for.
And the experience. Yeah, and the niche and the experience. We were just talking offline about the pet hotel. And that's super niche, and it works. And that's because it's niche, and that's people know exactly what they are getting for, what experience and so on. So it works.
But that's the point of niche. So niche does not necessarily mean small. It's just very specific and driven to a certain amount of people. But in the long tail curve of earnings, if you have a long tail, you are earning money until the end of the year. You don't need to be at the top of the bell. You can be at the end of the curve tail. But I think if you know what you're trying to deliver, even if you have a location that is not clear that you have that demand, you might have some demand. You can see the trend building up, but it's still not there. Then we really need to make sure that you deliver something that will achieve that. So it's all about the experiences that you build into the hotel. You cannot call yourself experimental hotel or design hotel or lifestyle hotel if you don't deliver that on a daily basis. So that's the other challenge that you have. It's the operational part of it, which is architects can design beautiful hotels. How you make them work on a daily basis, that's the biggest challenge, then to make sure that you are still a lifestyle hotel or still experimental hotel. And I'll give you the example going back to our first hotel, Casa Cook Madonna. Even though we are not the brand, we are just the operator, Casa Cook is a brand that is adults only. And you bring to a ski destination an adults only concept, and you still make it work. which is something that is very unique. So you need to make sure that when you do that, you are targeting the people that go for ski, though do not have kids, they pay high prices for that design experience. It's a niche market, but it exists, and you are proving that it exists. So you have to be also confident that the trends that you are seeing then materialize throughout your operational and product.
That's something I keep repeating, because people are scared when I tell them, okay, you should go with adult only. I say, yeah, but maybe there's a market on families, and people who have families won't come to your hotel. Yes, but you are going to be known more for the adult only, and people that come here that don't want to have kids going around. Or the reverse, then you say like a family friendly or family hotel or kids hotel. And this hotel, you are going to turn off the couples, but you're going to bring much more families because it's a concept for this. So I think like hearing you as well, the traditional hotel is not gone, but the way we market it and the way we design it is completely different than before, because we need to make sure we keep the niche, the experience around it, and not only the traditional hotel that fits that one size fits all thing.
I think the big box fits all, it's gone. And you can see even the larger brands are reinventing themselves to try to focus on very specific parts of the market, because that is gone. And I think that has to do also with how evolution happened, right? So I'm not an expert, but just think about the speed of digitalization. You have the world in your phone nowadays, right? 20 years ago that didn't exist. I was listening to a famous British comedian, Jimmy Carr. He came to Vienna, and he was making the joke about, when he was a kid, he would save money, and I did the same, to buy records. And he had a huge collection. He was always trying to, do little jobs to buy the next record. And then 20 years after, he has all of that in one phone in his hand, right? So how quickly we came to it. And that is also what is happening in our travel experiences. Before, you have to have the physical map to know where you're going. You have to ask people. Nowadays, you have guides that tell you everything. You have influencers on Instagram showing you what is going to be there. So it's all about the availability of information. So you need to be more careful on what you are to be able to be seen. Because if you are everything, you are nothing at the same time.
100%.
So because of these new social media platforms, these influencers, and this kind of see through others people's eye first and then experience yourself, you really need to know who you are targeting. Otherwise, you are gray in the middle of everything, right? You are nothing at the same time. So it's also a trend of how people travel. You don't travel anymore to a new destination without going into Instagram or whatever to see what it is, what other people have done. You go to Google, you read a recommendation, you go to TripAdvisor, you see what people have said about that place.
You go to ChatGPT and Gemini to ask about the recommendation.
You ask Claude what is the best options. You ask Gemini, and they put it on the map and everything. So it's moving so quickly. I never used AI 2 years ago. Nowadays, I use AI not for everything, but constantly. The big hotel chains never used AI, and they were always saying, well, we have our proprietary softwares, we are fine. And nowadays they are integrating into 100%. All of them. So the speed of change is quite quick as well. So you need also to be aware that now everyone sees everything. So if you want to be distinctive yourself, you need to claim your spot. You need to be specific.
And going back to the mixed building use, why should a building have only one use in a way? Take me through what a mixed building looks like at operating level.
Well, I've been working with mixed use buildings from 20 years now, almost 20 years. I don't think anything should be rigid and not evolve. So I think things evolve. So back in 30 or 40 years ago, residential building was always the same as residential, and you go there to sleep, and it's busy mainly from afternoon until early morning on weekdays, and then it's empty. And the city was built around that. So there would be your neighborhoods of residential only, where people go and sleep, and then there would be the busy city center where the offices are and everything. Mixed use building proves that doesn't need to happen, right? So mixed use is basically, as it's defined, is one piece of real estate that has different purposes. So it can be a residential, can have some commercial at the ground floor, it can have some event space, it can have some kindergarten included, can have multiple things. On the hospitality business, when you say mixed use, is because either we are mixing it different hospitality uses, or hospitality with something else. So
I've seen quite often the short stay, long stay, like
yes.
even people living in the building. So you have this kind of mixed use hybrid. Yeah.
You do have that a lot more, and also it happens more in big cities or expensive cities where real estate is expensive. So I was based in London before moving here, and in London you can see that, right? So you have high rises. The ability to build a skyscraper is difficult. So when you do it, you want to maximize every square foot or feet, square meter, by trying to put as much as possible to make it profitable. So co-living, which was a concept that started probably, 8 years ago, more mainstream. The biggest buildings that started was in London. When you move into service apartment, become a more mainstream, self-contained, own concept, London was where most of it started. So you could see it happening quite oftenly. Yeah. And then the ground floor, where most of the footfall would come through, sometimes does not need to be part of the hotel. You could have a completely separate restaurant that is not part of the hotel that will service both the people from around and inside of the building. So I think the mixed use is creating a dynamic of making sure that every square meter that you build on that building, it's the most profitable, but the most used as well throughout 24 hours and not only, nights to sleep. So having a normal residential building next to a co-living, which is basically co-living is a mixture of small living and short stays or longer stays. Or you can have a normal service apartment, which again is a hotel model where you can have very short stays, 1 to 3 nights, or 2 weeks or 6 months, or even sometimes have within the same building a normal hotel, but for the specific segment, more economy, where the smaller rooms, which are cheaper, versus a service apartment which is bigger, so a little bit more expensive. And then everything activated in the one or more public spaces floors, where you have restaurants, bars, gyms, wellness areas with pools. You can have co-working and office, that is becoming more often the case. Basically where people would congregate and spend most of the time to activate those areas, and where obviously you generate more revenue as well.
That's true. I'm going to ask you a very selfish question, because I'm very curious on this. So it's like, if you use an example, you take like 100 unit building. How do you split it between the different short stay, long stay, different mixed use? Like, what's the process behind to decide how you split the building?
I think market dictates it. So again, going back to what we were saying, you need to understand where the demand is or where it might come from. So if we are in Vienna and we are looking at something that might have a normal stay and a longer stay, you need to see which locations you are, where you are based. If you are closer to an office district or a conference area, you know that we have a lot of peak demand times where you need shorter stays. But if you are in a more industrial or non-office area, but then you might think people might stay for 3 to 5 nights or even longer if it's a contracting area. So that defines how you're going to split it. But usually the normal hotel takes the bigger portion, just because it's more flexible. You can either stay 1 night or you can either stay a week. It's not ideal, but you can make it work. Whilst a service apartment, because it's a bigger unit, so it's a more expensive real estate piece to build, you want to make sure that you cater people that will stay for 5 to 28 days or whatever, longer stays. So it's again, the market dynamics going to dictate that.
And you think as well, like if you were a traditional hotel owner and you wanted to go with this trend of a mixed use building, what would be the minimal experiment they could do tomorrow, like without changing the capex and the design and everything? Is there any kind of a small experiment they can try and go into?
So we tend to say in our company Treasurers what lifestyle is. So lifestyle is always driven by design, food and beverage, and wellness. That's how we define it, and it's my definition again. And basically, what I would say to any owner that wants to make it a little bit more lively, it's food and beverage, which in our industry everyone runs away from. Because it's very difficult to run it efficiently or well or consistently and profitably. And especially in countries like Austria, where labor costs are higher than other countries, for instance. Obviously, the quality of produce is also quite good, so you trade it off a little bit. But to make a concept like this to work, you really need to be experienced. If you don't know, I would always say you can still develop it, but just partner up with someone that can run it for you, and then you still create something that is unique. And you have examples of that. You have here in Vienna Nanny. Nanny has gone to different hotels in different countries as well, and the consistency that they deliver, it's great for the hotel owner, right?
Yes.
So I've created a nice destination restaurant or a nice lifestyle restaurant, and I'm not the one running it, so I make sure it's profitable. So I think food and beverage is always where people have an edge very quickly. Wellness, it's an interesting area as well.
F&B, Hoxton is doing a good job on this. I think Hoxton, the full concept of Hoxton, where it started, because they had the strong F&B elements, that's pushed the rooms.
But that's the history of Ennismore. So Ennismore started, Hoxton was the birth of Ennismore. So started in London again, just because they understood that people don't need large rooms. They need a nice looking hotel that they feel comfortable with, but they wanted to stay in if you have something interesting to offer. So they developed the F&B concept first, and then the other way around. And then they added more elements for you to actually stay there throughout your journey. So you have the co-working in there, so you can stay and work. You have the bars with different vibes throughout the day as well. And the restaurant food is always quite interesting and exciting, so they don't stand still in the same concept. So Ennismore was built on that premise, and nowadays they have, 20 different brands. We are lucky because we have partnered up with them in a couple of projects that we are looking at, and we do understand it's F&B first. And we understand that that's a huge benefit for most of the hotel owners. And that is the easiest way for you to generate buzzy movements within your space. Because if it's a great F&B concept, people will travel from anywhere to go there. And you have people that can save, a year just to do that travel, to go to that hotel, to eat on that restaurant, right?
Yes.
It's very iconic. I think food and beverage took a big hit with the pandemic, but it was the first to recover as well, because people wanted to go out and see other people. So it's the best place for you to go for a drink with a friend, to go to a meal with somebody else, to bring the family for a birthday, whatever. But they recovered quite quickly, but also they benefit from that trend of people wanting to stay in one place and mingle and make this community feel. So they expanded into the hotel. So when you walk into any of these, let's say, traditional lifestyle hotels, what they are offering is a busy ground floor, right? So you come in and you don't necessarily understand what is lounge, what is bar, what is restaurant, what is co-working. There is no definition hard border. So I think they blend in the environment. And then when you go up to the room might not be massive. It might be a smaller room, but it's heavily designed, have the basics well done. It's still very pleasing to you. And again, you go there, you sleep, you have a nice shower, and you come down and you are again on the vibe of the movement of people. And that's what you want wherever you go.
I'm always amazed by Enixmore and specifically Hoxton, because it was the first brand to make a developer and a guest believe that they shouldn't close the ceiling. And I was like, it's more like industrial and the lifestyle model. It's just cheap in terms of capex not to close the ceiling. It looks nice, and now people are actually taking this kind of example from Hoxton and Enixmore.
I use the example from Casa Cook, not on my own benefit, but their design approach is minimalistic. And basically minimalistic says just have very earthy tones everywhere and not overly complex buildings. So development costs are very low, right? So it's very clever how they do it. But that experience brings you a calmness naturally to you. It works very well, but at the same time it's so cleverly designed not to be overly expensive. So do you have many examples like this in different brands and concepts? And again, that's the good thing of proliferation of concept, which is there is always something for your budget and your journey, right? So if you don't want to spend too much money because you're coming to Vienna to watch Jimmy Carr do a comedy show, you just want something cheap, you have it. If you are coming to see it, but you want to stay for 3 or 4 days and you want to experiment, then you have things like the Hoxton or the 25 hours, which are more edgy, or the So, which is a little bit more upmarket. So you have a little bit for everything. And that's the good thing of our industry. It's all about people, right, in the end. So what do you want and what can you get from what the other people are offering? So
that's true. And on the other on the other part of the spectrum, there's also like branded residences. And do you think it's a genuine innovation, or it's just real estate with a luxury logo on it?
Well, it's an innovation, but it's not reinventing the wheel. So branded residences, probably 30 years of track record if you
Yeah.
think about it. It started initially on resorts, on more luxury destinations where people would go for a normal resort. They would enjoy to stay there, and then the resort decided, well, let's do some apartments and we can sell them to our customers, and the customer would return to stay in their apartment. So that's how it started, and you have that in Caribbean and you have that in Americas.
I've done one in Kyoto, in Japan, with a Four Seasons Kyoto, which we had like part residences and part hotel, and it was a revenue management nightmare as such, because it's the first time in my life where I had a floating inventory.
Yeah.
Depending if the owner was there or not, the inventory will change every day. Can you imagine? The occupancy was different, RevPAR was different, so I had to relearn revenue management with brand residences.
It is quite difficult for revenue management and operations because not only can change float rate, but it can also vary every year, because every year you have the option to put it back or not, and you can decide 1 year I don't want to put it back, I want to use it myself. So it's quite an interesting model, but in essence it was basically a resort destination approach that would make you come more often to the place, right? So nowadays branded residences is becoming more on trend, not because of that, just because of the evolution of how we live nowadays in our cities. So obviously the world wealth has continued to grow, maybe not equally, but has continued to grow. So more people have more wealth, and you have now more than one house, and you can live in different parts of the continent or the world as you see fit. You might spend 3 months in Dubai, then you want to come to London, and then you go to Miami. So branded residence is in essence a way to make residences a little bit more upmarket or more available to people that just want to travel and have this kind of hospitality experience attached to it. So that's a trend of how we live that is pushing it. And then it's also, I would say, consequence of how we saw COVID and Airbnb massification, which is people now understand that they can have bigger spaces to stay for vacation. They don't need just to have that bedroom with 24 square meters. They can have a bigger suite. They can travel with family and groups, and they might need a bigger units. So branded residences also taps into that, let's say, extended stay, larger group traveling. And then, of course, the biggest portion of the market is still luxury, but slowly you're seeing it coming down the scale, and you have now, let's say, mid-scale, midpoint offerings on branded residences, which 5 years ago were impossible to think about it, but you still have that. But again, it goes back to what we talk about normal hotels. You have a pocket for everyone, right? So they are trying to capture as much as possible. What I found fascinating, and I can still understand it, I might have to experience it to understand it, is the standalone branded residence concept. Because for me, so standalone branded residence is essence the same offering, but without an hotel service provided, or not without an attached hotel to provide hotel services. You still have the housekeeping, you still have some branded services, but it's a residential building.
Yes.
That part I still don't understand. This is me, the hotel operator speaking. I don't understand it. I can see it on a more high-end luxury residential where you distinguish for yourself from other luxury residential. So you are branded by Missoni or you're branded by Ritz-Carlton. Yes, there is an element of brand awareness that attached to the mind of people and they perceive the value. But then on the day-to-day service, there is no much change. There is some, but not much change.
I'm sure we can have someone from Ritz-Carlton that will explain you what's the difference. But
no, we are lucky because we have a few projects with branded residences, and we are in partnership with one of the best branded residence operators. And I have sat down on panels with them to side by side. They have a definition for it. I'm just me being very practical. I need to experience it. And that's the good thing, because in our industry, we get to exchange ideas, and I get to challenge them, and they get to challenge my conceptions as well. And as I said, I think there is a market for it. I personally don't understand it, but I would love to understand it eventually.
So if anyone is listening, please reach out. We would be quite curious to understand. But as well, there is a lot of trend, a new market, which is guiding those branded residences or mixed building and so on. And what does the Gen Z actually want from hospitality? But Gen Z, we can even extend to the next Gen Alpha. Where do you think is going in this direction?
Yes, so that is a great question because a few years ago I had this conversation. A good friend of mine, we were both millennials, right? So that was the discussion 20 years ago. What the millennials will want now, it's completely different, right? We have now 3 generations below that,
Yes.
anyways. But I think the trend is always the same, which is obviously we are in a lot more digital world. So you want human connection. That will be my summary.
Yes.
And what the younger generation wants is exactly that: is places where they can interact. And that's why, for instance, hostels has always been successful over 50 years because that's the basic line of traveling and connecting with people with the same mind. And I think what we are seeing now in these mixed-use buildings and these branded residences is that wealthy younger generations, they still want the same. They just want it on a level of pricing and quality that is different. But you need to offer them the experimental part of it. So they want to connect with like-minded people. They want to understand the places where they go. So they experience the places. They sometimes don't need to leave the place where they stay to do that. That's the good thing of luxury offering. You can bring in, you are in Japan, you can bring the best restaurant into the building and then you can offer it all in one building instead of going out to try it out. But you also have diversity, right? So you need to be able to offer them different things throughout their journey. The balance to make it happen is very difficult, and that how you make it consequential, that's quite interesting. I think the hospitality world into the branded residence has been successful because they have a definition already, right? When you think about Ritz-Carlton or you think about Mercure, again, just to give them the good example now, you know exactly what the guest profile will be, what the price point will be, the average quality will be. So when you book in one of those, you know what to get. So if you convert that into a branded residence, you know it will be a different room layout, but the concept or the positioning or the offering will be similar. So I think that's why branded residence has been growing so quickly, because you are able to categorize it more efficiently and more quick to the market. And in markets that are growing quite heavily in terms of these developments, where Florida is a great example, Miami area or Dubai, you can see that people pick the place before going there just for the brand. Chelsea has branded residence development in Dubai with over, I think it's over 2,000 units. All of them were sold quite instantly. And would you ask me, so what is that offer? What do they offer? Doesn't matter. Because it was branded Chelsea, people just flocked to it, which for me was astonishing when I first heard it.
Power of the brand.
And this was a discussion that I'm part of a research project called The Future Living, which is hosted by the Future of Hospitality, the Institute of Future Hospitality, which is part owned by PKF here in Vienna. And we did this discussion of different branded residences models and examples, and we visit some. We have a few tours around Europe that we do. And when this example came up, I was like, but why would you buy without knowing what you're getting? And the answer was because you own a piece of Chelsea in a way, and that's what it mattered for them. Most of the people probably never would stay there.
So it's a prestige.
They just own that piece, and that's it. So again, it's the brand attached to the value and your mind, the brand awareness in your mind, that builds up the speed as well.
That's something which I had some interesting discussion at my time at Four Seasons, and I think that's also applicable for a lot of luxury properties and brands, where they told me people invest in luxury branded properties or even to stay in luxury hotels for the prestige. For the storytelling, and that's the most important, and that's the mindset shift I had to do when managing luxury properties compared to upscale and other elements, because the perception, the brand, the luxury, the storytelling, the prestige. To come back from holidays in the US and say I stayed at the Four Seasons Tokyo, and then you can say how much you paid. You can even show off to your friend and so on. So it's a prestige, it's a storytelling. I think that's the biggest element. So I fully understand the branded residences and why people were so attracted to it, because now they can say I own a piece of Chelsea. Look at me.
And you can see the success in some examples of how quickly the sales or how high the sale price of some of those developments achieve. You have here in Vienna the Mandarin Oriental branded residences.
Just open,
You have in London the Raffles, the Old War Office, although below, and now you have the Six Senses in London as well, which is a good example. For instance, that one because it's in Bayswater, so it's an area where normally you wouldn't necessarily assume with luxury. Next to Paddington Station, it's central but not necessarily luxurious. But they redeveloped the Whitley building, which is a beautiful building, into a Six Senses hotel and residences, and the residences are selling quite quickly and quite a higher price than anticipated. Not the same level of luxury that you then get at the Raffles. Those prices are much higher.
Yeah.
And they are not all sold, but they don't need to as well, right? The same story as here, Mandarin Oriental. I had the pleasure to meet the developer, and he was explaining it. We set our goal to sell them at a higher price than what is normal or available. We wanted to be the luxury residential product. Yeah. So we are not in a rush to sell it immediately. We don't need the money, luckily. So we opened the hotel. We actually opened the residences first, and then we opened the hotel, and some of them are still available. But we are achieving a premium that is proving that Vienna has a potential for auction market that before no one thought it was possible. Yeah. So again, it really depends how you structure an investment and what you want to achieve. Some people want to do branded residences as a equity play, meaning it's a self-funding the development itself, if it's a co-hosted with an hotel. So you basically build an hotel with branded residences. You sell those first on paper to be able to put that equity back into the development and then complete everything. So it's an anchor. Others do it as a prestige river. So just to elevate the prestige of the offering and to be able to have bigger units and, create something that was unique. And it's always, again, going back to what is your motivation in the end.
I agree on this. And so we talk about some mixed-use building, we talk about the branded residences, and we talk about a bit about what the new generation wants to the in hospitality. And if you were to build a hotel for 2035, describe the property you would build. What would be the where it would be the size, the unit mix, what is the ground floor, any kind of features or capacity on this? Robot or AI everywhere?
That has many. So it's not that far away, so 10 years, but in 10 years a lot changes, or less than 10 years, but a lot changes. So I think big buildings are becoming less common. So if you Thibault came to me and said, "Hey, Tiago, you have, I don't know, 50 million euros, go and build your hotel." I would not necessarily build a very large number of rooms hotel. I would build probably a very niche high-end hotel in the sense that, restricted stock in the, revenue manager dream.
Yes.
But basically what I would do is to try to create something that is unique as a destination, as an experimental hotel.
Yeah.
I think you are seeing that trend is already here. It's no longer a trend. That's a reality. People want experiences. So I would focus on delivering that experience. And for me, that is driven, but this is my personal taste, my opinion. I'm not saying the hospitality industry would go to there, but I still think it's all about cultural knowledge of the place where you're going and everything that related to culture translating into your body, meaning your mindfulness experience. So you can do a wellness retreat, your food, your feeding of your body, so food and beverage experience, and then your rest as well. As you go to sleep, you spend a third of the day sleeping, so you want to give them the beautiful experiences. So I would probably design something, go back to Portugal, my country. I would go probably closer to the sea. I would do a very low height development, so stretched instead of being height, where you have a beautiful restaurant that is farm to table or local to table. So everything will be regional. So people experiment the local place where they are staying. They would be greeted by people that are from the community and not, external, staff coming from a different country. Try to be as more authentic and local as possible, and be able to offer them that something that is culturally rich. So building that has character, that is in a location that has merits for you to stay. Otherwise, why would you go there? So by the sea, a nice beach, whatever destination that would be. And then I would focus on giving them, toe-to-head experience where you have a nice wellness experience, which doesn't necessarily translate into a spa. It might just be having your quiet corners where you can go and read your book, or you have a nice infinity pool overlooking the sea.
Cold bath, sauna.
Exactly. Just something for you to be with yourself or with your loved one or with your family, but for your own personal experience and pleasure, and then feed the body with nice drinks, nice food, and everything entertained by this kind of hospitality, human to human touch, basically.
That's super amazing. I think that's very optimistic as well, because what you just described, first of all, doesn't cost 50 million. And second, it also gives opportunity for smaller owners, smaller players to do like the big guns. And we can maybe organize another recording for this, the power of the brand, because those kind of things, you maybe don't need to have a brand on this kind of thing to attract people and have a concept, have a niche, and be successful.
Well, actually, that's the good thing about I'm against the large chains, even though I work with them, which is a bit weird. But so now it's more into your realm. But the hotel to be successful does not depend only on the concept, right?
Yeah.
I can create a beautiful concept, but if you don't know about it, you would never go there.
Marketing. You
So
need to
it's
market
visibility.
it. Yeah.
So you get visibility two different ways. Either you spend your own money to create this storytelling, this narrative, you get good in digital exposure, and you people notice it and they want to travel there by themselves, and they book direct to you. Again, dream of the owner. But that requires a lot of investment, a lot of know-how that sometimes the small players don't have, or you affiliate somebody that knows how to do that. So for me, the big brand only gives me certainty that I would get exposure. So if I get a good match with their brand concept, if that makes sense for what I'm trying to create, then it's the perfect dream.
Distribution, channels, and so on.
But you can achieve that by yourself as well. And you have a number of good examples of brands that started independent and then got acquired, exactly because they were able to create this storytelling by themselves with some clever punk marketing, meaning no expensive marketing. And then the big boxes start looking at it. Okay, so they make sense. Maybe we should get them to ourselves. Some of the big brands did that well, and they kept the authenticity by keeping the founders involved. So Accord or Ennismore in this case did that very well with the 25 hours, with Mama Shelter. So all the founders are still somehow involved, and the decisions, they have veto power in some of the projects, which is good. Others, they did not do that. We have now recently Citizen M was required, so I'm pretty sure that no one from Citizen M is there to say, should we do it or not? So Marriott bought the whole package for themselves, which might be good or bad. It really depends on how you see it. But I think what you need to make an hotel successful is visibility. So when you set up to create something, and again, going back to the dream, I need to be sure that I am capable of doing by myself. If not, I need to get somebody else to do it. You can do without affiliating to a brand. You can. There are many different ways to do that. You have experts like yourself on these various, let's say, classes of knowledge that can help you do that. You can create. Urbanauts is a good example. So the whole branding was created by a brand agency here in Vienna. So there was a guidance on the direction that they wanted to go, but somebody came up with the actual means to do it and developed the storytelling. So again, you really need to make sure that you know what you're doing. If you don't, get the experts to help you, because I think that's the knowledging what you don't know is the best way to move forward. So visibility, it's a key issue, and sometimes you need the big boys to do it. Others you can develop by yourself.
That's the beauty, and that's what I do every day, day in and day out. Like I help the smaller players do like the big guns, and that's before the brand had this kind of special expertise, and that's what they were bringing as well to the table. And still, don't get me wrong, but today you can still surround yourself with people who have this kind of expertise, bring new agencies, revenue management, marketing, accounting, distribution, and so on, and kind of replicate what some branded properties can do. Of course, one side I see still powerful with a brand. Distribution sometimes can be quicker because they have like the power of the bulk buying in a way, the power of the brand, and as well there was another one which I forgot. The loyalty program. Loyalty program. This one for me is something which is hard to replicate yet.
That is something that people don't really understand. But loyalty programs are true value. Because you are basically tapping into a database that is already like-minded, right? So you are an hotel with access to millions of people that have the same mind of you to travel to these kind of hotels. Different companies have different loyalty programs, and they all say that they're constantly growing at X millions a year. But in essence, you always had that. If you were a member of Amex, you were already part of a loyalty program. You just didn't understand exactly how to convert that into customers. There are always these kind of programs that can allow you to benefit from a larger database of customers. And the good thing with the hotel brands is that they basically integrate those two together, and now they use the same motor to push it. And for you, it's a lower cost of acquisition of your customer. In the end, as an owner of an hotel, what I care about is the bottom line. So if I can lower my cost by being more efficient and by getting my customers on the cheaper way to my hotel, the better, right? Because it's less cost for me. So it's big brands help with that because they can bring you standardized procedures. So you end up saving on some of the operational of day-to-day hotel. They also bring their muscle behind it. So they 50, 100 years or old of history doing that. So people know what to expect. And they also open doors to programs or collaborations or accounts that you would never get to by yourself. You can have a Capgemini business account tapping into your hotel. If you want to do it directly, you probably spend a year of networking to get there. So that's the benefit of the big brand. But then if you are trying to be very unique and very niche, you might not need any of that because what you are targeting, your customer, is none of those. So you might want just be, if you are a mountain hut in the middle of Austria, Alpine area, you might not need Capgemini business account. You might need the hikers, the guys that do that, and they want to stay there. So you have to target your customer differently. So again, it's going back to what you said. You have experts in all areas. You just need to be mindful of what you want to achieve, very clearly define your pathway, and then there are different ways to get there.
It's music to my ear. And there's a lot of things that people don't understand about you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes it's hard to realize that, for example, revenue management, most of people I talk to in independent didn't know about revenue management before, and still today. Today, like I think maybe the data changed, but I think it was close to 95% or 94% of hotels worldwide don't have a revenue management system. And it's not because they are stupid, it's just because they don't know that. They don't know what they don't know, and they don't know that revenue management system exists. They don't know revenue management exists.
And they rely on the brand. If it's an international franchise brand, they rely on the brand to do that. But the brand itself, they might have revenue management teams behind it, but they're also looking at on a much wider perspective and not on the niche perspective or funnel perspective. I always give the example. So we work with Hilton hotels here in Vienna. We were developing an hotel in the city center of Vienna. And when we were building our business case and what we wanted to do with the building, so we knew the building, we were brand matching, as we call it. We approached Hilton and we had an idea to use one of their brands. And Hilton is probably the strongest player in Vienna. So they have around, I think, 700 rooms, actually more than that.
It's massive.
They have 1,500 rooms, that's correct, within 6 hotels. And when I start asking what is your contribution? Meaning you as a Hilton, what do you bring to the hotel without the hotel doing anything? And I was shocked because, again, power of the brand. They have 86% of bookings coming to Hilton systems directly. So if the hotel
directly, okay, not
direct
from
loyalty and everything together, 86%. And then if you split it, you would be shocked how much the loyalty is, but I'm not going to say that. But I was surprised, and I was like, how can you do that? And that's what they say. Well, it's the power of the brand, the American market, obviously Vienna, but also we have been here so many years, and you have so big hotels that we need the muscle. So we put the resources here, and we dominate the market to that extent. So anything else that you build with Hilton will benefit from that. Doesn't mean that you're going to get 86%, but you know that they have the ability to bring such high level of volume of customers. Then everything else that you build on top, it will be a plus. So that's the benefit of a big brand. But in the end, you still need to do your own revenue management because those customers might not be the highest paying customer or might not be the target that you want. We were mostly a leisure hotel focus, so it's impressive, but we don't have meeting facilities. We are not talking corporate, so we are not going to pick all of those. Again, that's why you need the clever intelligence to understand whose customer you're going to get from and how you're going to maximize your profit. So revenue management is obviously important. So we had in our structure revenue management,
there you go.
Even though Hilton also has his own revenue management in-house that they can provide us a service. So.
No, that makes all sense. I think we could talk about those topics for 3 hours, but I think we're going to wrap it up. And I ask this question at the end of every recording, but if you had looking back at the discussion we just had, if you had a big billboard to put in the middle of Vienna that everyone could read, what would you put on it?
In terms of hospitality, or
in terms of the future of hospitality, in terms of mixed brand, in terms of mixed use, in terms of the future of the hotel of 2035, if there is a big sentence that everyone could read, what would you put on it?
I would probably be very enigmatic as I am. So I would say, be curious, just travel, something like that, just to I think curiosity is very important for anyone, but in our industry, I think that is what feeds our business, right? Be curious about learning about the new concept, the new destination, the new food. So just travel, just go and see. I think that would summarize basically what I try to do as much as possible. It's probably not the answer you wanted, but it's quite
even
clever.
better than what I was expecting. So all good. No, but thanks so much for today's recording. I had a lot of fun. And I've learned a lot. As I mentioned, we could talk about this kind of thing forever. But yeah, so if there is one thing that to take out for this conversation, I think it's this. Stop asking what kind of hotel we run. Start asking what your building is allowed to become. Tiago, thank you. So where can people follow you that just to see what you are building and what you're working on and so on? Is there any way that people can find you?
Well, yes. So TREASURESTS Hospitality, we have our own website. You can look for us in treasurests.com. We are building up our portfolio as we go. We are still a young company, but we have our first hotel open, Casa Cook Madonna, in Madonna di Campigo, Italy. And we have 5 other hotels coming up in the next 3 years. And we are obviously Austrian-based, but we are Central and Southern Europe focused. So we have something in Portugal, have something in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria as well.
Cool. So that was Tiago Venâncio from TREASURESTS Hospitality. So if this made you look at your own asset differently, share it with the person who owns the building. So HXT is on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcast. Clips are on Instagram and on TikTok at HXT212 Podcast. And voila. So my name is Thibaut Catala, and this was HXT212. I'll see you on the next one.